All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and yeah, 15 minutes late today. I do apologize. I did correct the start time to 12:15. I have one viewer, my most loyal probably, guy who's super helpful all the time, but they don't like it when I start late, and I appreciate that. I really do. I do my best not to, but I got a couple of reasons for the 15-minute delay I will share with you before I get into the usual topics. You saw the by the way, and you did see the thumbnail, obviously, smeared by CNN and her own party. That's RASHIDA TLAIB. And I really wanted to get all my ducks in a row before I talked about that. So I wanted to make sure I was being fair to everybody involved, especially Jake Tapper, CNN, and Governor Whitmer, because I use the term smeared, and it's a strong term, and I was pretty confident. I was very confident, of course, when I use it, but then I started looking very closely at what was said this morning by Tapper and by Governor Whitmer, and I wanted to be certain I was being fair to them. I didn't go on the air and say something that I might regret that might not be accurate. So that's part of the reason I'm late. And if I hadn't been so concerned about that, potentially getting it wrong, I probably would have been only a couple minutes late. The other reason, frankly, it was a little hard for me to get started this morning. I got a text from one of my, I like to think of as a close friend. I don't know. Maybe they don't feel that I'm a close friend of theirs. And if that's the case, I'm really sorry. That's something I've done wrong. But I got a text from this person who's also a guest, a somewhat frequent contributor to the program. You may be able to figure out who it is. And they were upset about the way I conducted the last discussion with them on this program, feeling that I was muting them. And I wasn't muting. I have made clear, maybe not to my guests, I've got to start doing that now, that I've changed a little bit. What I do now is I have a filter. So if the two of us are talking at the same time, and I've said this before, but I want to be clear. If the two of us, meaning my guest or a caller, is speaking at the same exact moment I am, then they will be, their volume will be lowered. It won't be completely muted, but they'll be lowered so that you don't hear two voices vying to be heard at the same time. You'll only hear mine, and that's my prerogative. Obviously, as the host, I can do that, but someone may not like it, and I'm sorry about that. What I try to do is make sure that if I do speak over somebody so that they're not heard in that moment, that then I give them the opportunity to complete their thought and share what they were trying to say. Or they did say, but wasn't necessarily heard by the audience. By the way, do call at any point, and including if you want to discuss the logistics, 240-242-5646. I'm going to try to make it up to this person, but they were upset about that. I went back and watched the video, though, just to see whether they were being muted. Their voice wasn't being heard, and their voice was heard, no question about it. That to me was, and I actually have shared a few points where I've shown that the levels were similar. I think this was with a different guest where I shared the levels were similar, even though some thought I was talking over them, and maybe just my voice is a little more powerful. It also has to do, not that I have such a powerful voice, I'm not trying to say I do, but a little bit more of a radio voice just from years of doing this than maybe some other folks have. Also, just the microphone. This is a professional mic I use, Shure I don't even remember what, Shure SMB7, I believe, which is pretty much a standard mic for broadcasters. May not even, I think Billie Jean was recorded by Michael Jackson. It's famous for having been used, I believe, this mic or maybe its predecessor, but almost the exact same technology used by Michael Jackson when he recorded Billie Jean or Thriller, one of his big hits. Microphone technology hasn't really changed very much. This is an analog mic. It's connected to a plug in a USB amp that, it's an audio interface device, they call it. But basically, there's an amp, and it boosts the volume coming out of the microphone. In any event, that may also play into why I might sound a little louder, and I'll keep tweaking the settings, but basically they're the same. The volumes are similar. In any event, I went back and I watched the video, or a good chunk of it, to see whether I had, in fact, muted or kept portions of this caller, this guest's opinions from being shared. And they weren't. They were being shared. But what was upsetting to me is that I felt polite. I was not respectful to somebody who gave me the time and the consideration to be on my program. And I did not treat that person the way they should have been treated. And I feel very bad about that. I felt bad while I was watching. I was upset. And now I feel bad still, maybe not quite as bad, because time, heals all wounds, we hope. But can't heal. You can't heal the pain of the moms and dads in Gaza who have lost their children. But we hope it can heal our own wounds to a significant degree. So, again, I don't feel as bad, and I wasn't the one who was hurt. It was somebody else. But I hate the thought that I wasn't as respectful as this person deserved. And all I can say is I will strive to do better. But I felt bad in that moment, and it did delay me somewhat starting the program. It also kind of called to mind why I think I was, and this is, it may sound like I'm making an excuse or I'm trying to explain, and I never like it when people apologize and then try to justify their behavior. And I'm not trying to justify it. What I am trying to do, what I'm going to do now, is explain why I get so vehement. And, there have been a lot of posts. People are asking, why, you're so critical and you're this and you're so negative. And people don't agree with you. What do you think that's about? And I can only say this, it hurts, right? I mean, I see our country and supporting a genocidal regime. I see us off the rails in so many ways, not just in that regard. I see us not just ignoring or diminishing the ecocide, but even those who acknowledge the ecocide caused by the consumption of fossil fuels, claiming that the Biden-Harris administration deserves credit because they're drilling more. I mean, that's the crazy. To me, that's so completely irrational. I mentioned yesterday that my alma mater, of which I'm inordinately proud of having attended, I don't know if that's good grammar, which I am inordinately proud of having attended, has said, screw you to the pro-Palestine protesters. No, we're not going to divest. We're not going to explore divestment. We're not going to even, that's not on our radar. Well, that's painful to me. That hurts me. That's an institution that I have some really fond feelings, I still do. Yeah, I still feel good about it. And yet they're betraying what I believe are their deepest values. And I talk to people and they make comments about, how Israel is justified. I watched this clip with Bill Maher. I can't stand Bill Maher. It's not like I like Bill Maher. But he said things that I've heard other people say that I do care about. And I do care about. Well, Israel is defending itself. We shouldn't be telling Israel what to do. We're giving them the weapons they're using to just kill, at record levels. What do you mean we shouldn't be telling them what to do? We shouldn't be giving them the weapons in the first place. There you go. 28 more Gazans. So yesterday was 12. The Washington Post said the death count dropping. 28 back up, not as high as we've seen, but I mean, they just keep killing. They just keep killing. And it breaks my heart. And then I talk to friends, people I care about, who I know have great hearts, better than mine. They're better than I am. They do better things than I do. I always say good people do good things, bad people do bad things. What do? I talk on a friggin' video cast that nobody even watches. So who the hell am I to be self-righteous? But it still hurts me. It really does. And then I react in ways I'm sorry I did. So, and that can be hurtful. So I feel terrible about that. In any event, I want to share that with you and explain a little bit why the program, if you're watching it live, didn't start at the usual time. And if you were watching and, you're watching delayed, you're not watching live, you don't know, you didn't care, you don't care when I put this up, never mind. All right, so I always give you the death. I'm not even, I was so focused on my CNN story. By the way, we're also going to talk about workers. I only got to one worker story yesterday, which was the Teamsters non-endorsement. And I spoke about that at such length, along with quite a long conversation about why I believe that the Harris-Biden policy with respect to Israel is so bad and reflects so poorly on the Democratic nominee that she has demonstrated through that policy that she is not qualified to be president. So I spent quite a lengthy amount of time on that. Just to give the count, 41,495. I think Andalu Ajansi, if I said it wrong, I'm sure I'm saying it incorrectly. It's a Turkish name. They said close to 41,500. So yes, 41,495 official count from the Gaza Ministry of Health. Obviously, we know the numbers are much, much higher because many bodies have not been recovered and because others who have died as a direct result of this conflict, which is really just, Turkey shoot. It's Israel shooting fish in a barrel. They may not all be attributed to the Israeli military. So 28 more victims yesterday. And that's with the full support of the Biden-Harris administration. I'm going to get to the Democratic activist, former Democratic Party staffer, who has left the party after the DNC, and her incredibly, extraordinarily eloquent account for why she did that. We will get to that. That will be the second portion or the third portion. I don't know. Was that the first portion, the second portion? I don't know. The second portion or the portion coming up will be more on not exactly Israel, Gaza, but very closely related, tangentially related in this country to the fallout from that genocide by Israel. So we'll continue. And I'm not even bringing up, I just didn't have time to look closely at what's happening in northern Israel, in Lebanon, where I did see yesterday that hundreds of thousands of Lebanese are fleeing from away from the Israeli border because of the death and destruction Israel's raining down on them. So that's just more poisonous fruit of the tight embrace of the Zionists in our government with the leadership. It's terrifying. So I wanted to, I billboarded this story. I'm not even sure what day. Let me see. I posted this on September 22nd. I posted a reaction to this story on September 22nd. So today's the 25th. That makes this a Wednesday. So I posted this on Sunday, very, very quickly after I saw the story on Mediaite. And I was very skeptical when I read it. And I did a very cursory investigation to see if it was true. And I determined it was BS, right? So I responded. So here's the actual Mediaite headline that caught my attention. And it's got the big Governor Whitmer completely dodges when confronted by Tapper on CNN about whether TLAIB, Representative Rashida TLAIB, made an anti-Semitic smear against Michigan's Attorney General. So I was like, really? Did Rashida TLAIB, I've never heard her say anything anti-Semitic. I don't believe she said anything anti-Semitic. She has been mischaracterized repeatedly, defamed as anti-Semitic by Zionists, by pro-Israel at any cost, at all costs, defenders, because she's been critical. She's one of the very, very few people in our government who has a voice, who holds elected office. She's one of the very, very few who have criticized the complete, unwavering support that our government, the Democratic government, which will almost certainly be the same policy if Republicans get in office, but either way, whoever wins in November, unless by some miracle it's Jill Stein, whoever wins, we're going to see more of the same. That is unwavering support for Israel, which means fully arming their genocide against Gaza, fully arming their civilian bombing, killing, massacring in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and fully arming their occupation illegal in the West Bank. Oh, that was a story I didn't get to because I was so busy. But right now, what Israel is doing is they're actually bulldozing towns in the West Bank. They're bulldozing Palestinian villages. They're just raising them. This is, by the way, very reminiscent of what Nazis did as well, just to try to erase the memory of a people completely. So genocide, again, we're seeing that in the West Bank. So I saw this by Israel. I saw this column, this headline, though, in Mediaite, and I was like, I got to explore this. What the hell is going on? Because I've made the point, I think you all know this, that I'm very, very, very skeptical now of claims of anti-Semitism. I don't often believe them. And we know that the main proponent, the organization that's consistently claiming there's huge amounts, massive anti-Semitism all over, where all Jews are constantly under threat, is the ADL, which has been recognized. And I've shown you, even Haaretz, I think, did, or some group did a deep dive. Wikipedia no longer credits, them as a reliable source. They're not considered honest. That being the ADL. But we did also showed you a deep dive, which specifically noted that a number of incidents that they could identify that ADL in the past few years has called anti-Semitic weren't. I mean, they were people criticizing Israel. That's all. Or maybe there was a Jewish person who was the victim of a crime, but there's no reason to believe, based on all the evidence that was adduced, that it was a crime that was motivated by Jew hatred. So it wouldn't have been anti-Semitic. But basically, what the ADL has done is conflate any criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism. Here, we don't even have that. So I looked at this headline, and explored it, and I came to the conclusion that it was complete BS. This was, by the way, that was posted 10:40 a.m. by Joe DePaolo. Joe DePaolo. I know it's really pronounced Paolo, not Paolo. I was just trying to be funny. So you can see my response, right? I posted this on Facebook with a little headline there, "Fixed it for you." And I posted that less than an hour after DePaolo had posted it. And you can see it's not like updated or anything. It was posted 9/22. That would be, Sunday. And within 10:40, and within 55 minutes, or exactly 55 minutes later, I updated it, and I, played around in my little, Photoshop, except I use GIMP because it's a open source, so it's free. I don't pay Adobe or whoever owns Photoshop for Photoshop. Although I understand it's better than GIMP, but by now it wouldn't even be better for me because I've used GIMP for 15 years. I remember buying a book, Understanding GIMP or Learning GIMP or something, back when I was in the radio station years, just at the beginning, may have even been before, because I was doing a little bit of graphic design, for myself. Nobody was going to hire me for it, but I was interested in learning how to do it, and I bought that book. So that's probably 20 years now, close to 20 years using GIMP. So I don't think I could use I'd have to learn Photoshop, and I'm old. I'm 61. I can't learn that stuff anymore. But anyway, I like to play around with this stuff. And so I rewrote Governor Whitmer completely dodges when confronted by Jake Tapper, like, oh my God, the governor, she's not going to stand up against the anti-Semitic RASHIDA TLAIB. So I fixed it, right? Watch. Because what really happened is Governor Whitmer fails to confront Jake Tapper, who falsely claimed that TLAIB made an anti-Semitic smear. She did. She didn't. Now, I've gone back and looked and no, she didn't. So first, let's go through it. Now, I wasn't even sure if I was going to talk about this. I really wasn't. But I decided to, and I'm going to, before I show you the actual back and forth with Tapper and what she really, what she, meaning TLAIB, really said, and did Whitmer really dodge and all that, I'll get to this first. Why did I decide to talk about this today? Why, it's already been over 3 days, or over 3 days, because it was Sunday morning that I posted that. Well, I noted yesterday that the story is getting a lot of attention. So here's the Rational National, who did a great job with this, by the way. You could just watch his reportage, but we may have some slightly different nuances in the way we present the story. But and I've been critical of David Dole because he's in the bag for Kamala, and I don't believe she's qualified to be president. So I find that frustrating to say the least. And there's been a couple of other times when I think Mr. Rational National has, kind of bought into what I would call kind of BS identity politics stuff rather than focusing on what I think is most important, which is just guaranteeing everyone has enough. Every single person has enough and no one has too much. And, we deal with how different members of different groups may or may not be treated unfairly. But once those problems will not go away, but, in other words, inequity, what have you, will not go away completely, but will go away a lot if we guarantee everyone has enough and no one has too much. And it'll be easier to address the other problems. But Dole kind of bought into the identity politics shtick a little bit, and I find that frustrating. So there are things about Dole I don't really like. But that said, he did a great job with this. He goes into it a very, very deep dive, probably deeper than I will. And so when I saw this, and I saw the due dissidence bros are now talking about this, I was a little like, wait a second, I got there first. Right? I got there within 55 minutes of the original story on Mediaite, realizing this is a load of crap. That TLAIB never smeared, strike that. TLAIB never said, she did criticize Dana Nessel. Dana Nessel is the Attorney General in Michigan. She did criticize her, but she didn't criticize her for being Jewish. So let's first, so this first came up, okay, before we even hear the Jake Tapper spin on CNN, that's false. The original story was in Detroit's Metro Times, and it's important to realize, well, first of all, here it is. So this was actually published back on September 13, and Steve Neveling wrote it, and here he identifies, after an interview with Rashida Tlaib, what her concern is. She is upset, the Congresswoman Tlaib is upset because Attorney General Nessel arrested Palestinian students for protesting the killing, the indiscriminate genocide. Well, genocide is always indiscriminate. The indiscriminate killing, the genocide, in fact, in Gaza, the occupation by Israel of Palestine, and Nessel decided to arrest a bunch of students. So Tlaib says you would expect that from a Republican, but not a Democrat, and it's really unfortunate. Yeah, it kind of sort of is, isn't it? So that's what Tlaib said, and let's just get some more. So the actual quotes from Tlaib, and this just shows you the bias in the media. There's nothing that Tlaib said that was incorrect. In fact, it's all true, and it's incredibly troubling. You can't protest now against Israeli occupation, against Israeli genocide. You can't do it without going to jail. We don't live in it. See, people say to me, oh, well, we have to defeat Trump to save our democracy. What democracy? A Democratic Attorney General is locking up students because they're protesting against the genocide. And so here Tlaib says we have the right to dissent, the right to protest for climate, immigration rights, Black lives, injustice about the water shutoffs, because in Michigan they've had terrible problems with toxic water there. And that's due to Republican misrule, by the way, where they completely let the infrastructure fall apart and didn't give a crap about the water supply. So we'll blame the Republicans for that justly. But Obama, remember, went to Flynn and he said, "Oh, I'll drink the water," and he drank it and then immediately ran out of the room and vomited because it was so horrible. But TLAIB correctly points out that Nessel is treating the issue of Palestine differently. If you protest Israel's occupation, Israel's genocide, you get arrested at the University of Michigan. And then the author throws in the editorial comment, "I don't know if it's that relevant, or maybe it is relevant. Nessel is the first Jewish person to be elected Attorney General of Michigan." So there's an implication there, which I think is fair. I don't have a problem with it, but not by TLAIB. The implication comes from the author, Nievling, that perhaps TLAIB is going harder on pro-Palestine protesters because Nessel is Jewish. Maybe. That's the potential implication of the author. Is that a fair implication? Sure. Why not? I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. It's true. And yet we know that what TLAIB said, her own words, were innocuous. There was zero implication. She doesn't even mention Nessel was Jewish. For all we know, she didn't even know Nessel was Jewish. She just says she's treating the issue of Palestine differently, and that means there's bias possibly in the department. Now, that bias doesn't have to be because they're Jewish. It has nothing. There's plenty of. I know lots of non-Jewish people who are incredibly biased in support of Israel. It's a Zionist bias. It's not a Jewish bias to say that because you're pro-Israel, you're anti-Palestine, you're anti-protester, you're anti-peace. To say that you're only adopting those positions because you're anti-Semitic is ugly and wrong. There are lots of Jews, I'm one of them, who is completely against Israel and is completely in support of the protesters. So this implication that there's no way you can read into anything that, let me put it this way, there's no way you can fairly read into anything TLAIB said, any implication that Nessel's Judaism is impacting on her ability to be a fair attorney general or is biasing her. Nothing. Zero. Nada. But let's hear how Tapper phrases this first. Now let's go to Tapper. And you can hear, because this is an important story because it goes, first of all, it's made the rounds. I mean, a lot of people took this story and immediately interpreted it as proving Rashida Tlaib is anti-Semitic. So CNN has a lot of influence and people use it, relied on it to smash and bash Rashida Tlaib. They took an opportunity, to stick a sharp elbow in her ribs because that's what anti-Palestinians, that's what Islamophobes maybe want to do. That may be what we're seeing here. Just get this back for you. I'm having a little trouble with the video here. All right, so let's just watch this video.
Who is Palestinian. She called the charges from Nessel, who is Jewish, shameful. And Tlaib said, quote,
so the charges she's talking about are the charges against the students at the University of Michigan who were protesting. And it's interesting that Tapper brings up the fact that Tlaib is Palestinian. I'm not sure why. Only Palestinians care about Palestine? Is that his point? Is he saying she's biased because she's Palestinian? I kind of think he is. That's pretty bad, huh? That's pretty racist, isn't it, if that's the case?
The Attorney General decided if the issue was Palestine, she was going to treat it differently, and that alone speaks volumes about possible biases within the agency she runs. All
right, so there's the quote. Now, I watched this on Sunday before I posted my little meme where I said, there, I fixed it for you. But there's nothing in there. Tapper even goes to the exact quote. And the exact quote is, she's treating it differently than other issues. There's a bias there. Not that she's Jewish and she's biased, but there's a bias. There's some bias. There's a pro-Israel, anti-Palestine bias, period. End of story. Correct. She's correct.
Nessel responded by saying, quote, Rashida Tlaib should not use my religion to imply I cannot perform my job fairly.
So she did not. She absolutely did not. Now, we'll get into it a little bit later. Why did Nessel go there? Maybe because of the quote in the article that noted she was the first Jewish Attorney General. But again, Rashida Tlaib didn't say that. She didn't draw any connections. She didn't mention Nessel's religion. That was the author.
It's anti-Semitic and wrong, unquote. Do you think that Tlaib's suggestion that Nessel's office is biased was anti-Semitic?
All right, so there's the question that's completely a smear, completely defamatory. Do you think Tlaib's suggestion that Nessel's Judaism is biasing her? Let me play it again, because that's not exactly what she said. I didn't get that quote perfectly, but it's clearly, and I'm going to even put on the captions so you can read it.
Religion to imply I cannot perform my job fairly as Attorney General. It's anti-Semitic and wrong, unquote. Do you think that Tlaib's suggestion that Nessel's office is biased was anti-Semitic?
Listen, Jake, you know what? All I can say is that I know that our...
All right, so that's not the suggestion. He says biased because she's Jewish. So let me go back. We got to get that again, because this is where I was really struggling, because I wanted to make sure that what Jake was saying, what Tapper was saying, is that Tlaib was implying or was saying that she's biased because she's Jewish.
Who is Palestinian. She called the charges from Nessel, who is Jewish, shameful. And Tlaib said, quote, it seems that the Attorney General decided if the issue was Palestine, she was going to treat it differently, and that alone speaks volumes about possible biases within the agency she runs, unquote. Nessel responded by saying, quote, Rashida Tlaib should not use my religion to imply I cannot perform my job fairly as Attorney General. It's anti-Semitic and wrong, unquote. Do you think that Tlaib's suggestion that Nessel's office is biased was anti-Semitic?
Listen, Jake, you know what? All I can say is that I know that our Jewish community is in pain, as is our Palestinian and Muslim and Arab communities in Michigan. I know that seeing the, incredible toll that this war has taken on both communities has been really, really challenging and difficult, and my heart breaks for so many. But as governor, my job is to make sure that both these communities are protected and respected under the law in Michigan, and that's exactly what I'm going to stay focused on.
But do you think Attorney General Nessel is not doing her job? Because Congresswoman Tlaib is suggesting that she shouldn't be prosecuting these individuals that Nessel says broke the law, and that she's only doing it because she's Jewish.
All right, that's the statement that is false. That is the statement that is false. That Tlaib is only saying it because Nessel is Jewish. So let me play it again.
But do you think Attorney General Nessel is not doing her job? Because Congresswoman Tlaib is suggesting...
So there is, because Congresswoman Tlaib is suggesting...
she shouldn't be prosecuting these individuals that Nessel says broke the law, and that she's only doing it because she's Jewish.
All right, so Tapper, is saying Tlaib, and this is why I got a little bit confused in my head. I want to be very, very clear And it is absolutely clear that Tapper is saying that TLAIB is saying that TLAIB said the prosecutions are because Nessel is Jewish. That's not what TLAIB said. TLAIB did not attribute Nessel's action to her Judaism in any way, shape, or form. That's the simple fact. TLAIB did not raise the issue of Nessel's religion, did not suggest her religion was biasing her, did not suggest that the prosecutions were because of that. And Tapper said just the opposite. Tapper was, if not lying, very, very, very careless, very, very reckless with the facts. Here's the author of the piece itself, Steve Neveling. The day after I posted my meme, there I fixed it for you. Fact check. TLAIB did not say Nessel charged pro-Palestinian protesters because she's Jewish. That is what Tapper said. That is not what TLAIB actually said. Tapper falsely asserted that TLAIB claimed Nessel was acting because of her Judaism. She did say, TLAIB did say that Nessel was biased, but she never attributed to her Judaism. And I'm glad Neveling called that out. And he goes on to give a lot more detail, which I don't really feel like we need to get into. But what's most upsetting, I'll just put this on the screen real quick. This is from Neveling. TLAIB never once mentioned Nessel's religion or Judaism. Tapper said TLAIB claimed Nessel's Judaism was the reason she was prosecuting. TLAIB never mentioned the fact that Nessel's Jewish. Tapper lied. And by the way, it's so obvious. It's so easy. You just have to look at the quotes and you know. In fact, you can look at the quote that Tapper even said. A lie makes it around the world. I heard this quote once. A lie can make it around the world before the truth puts on its pants. So we see those who hate Rashida TLAIB going hog wild about this. They couldn't be happier. This woman, Ingrid Jock, in USA Today, she's apparently hates CNN, thinks they're Clinton News Network. But TLAIB makes anti-Semitic comments again. No, she didn't. She simply didn't. She simply didn't. But this is, and that's in a very, very widely read media outlet. CNN continues, so it's not just Tapper. Famous Islamophobe or anti-Palestinianophobe, I don't know what you want to call her, Dana Bash, she jumps in with anti-Semitism is everywhere, and that quote is part of the conversation David Chalian had condemning the quote by TLAIB, which wasn't made, which she never made. And you can see Neveling pointing that out as well, that this is BS. Now Dana Bash is lying about what happened. TLAIB never said Nessel filed the charges because she's Jewish. That's correct. She didn't say it. He's the author. He should know. Read the piece. It's really, really easy. This is how the media manufactures consent. How they manufacture consent for crackdowns on speech, on free speech. Well, someone who's criticizing it, she's just motivated by anti-Semitism. Maybe those protesters are anti-Semitic. No investigation into whether there was any justification for the arrests. No question whether it violates the First Amendment for a state to arrest protesters at a state university for voicing opinion on a matter of supreme public importance. None of that's investigated by CNN. Only a false claim that a politician who happens to be Palestinian said that prosecutions were based on the religion of the prosecutor. We don't live in a free society anymore. Final point. there's no way that any of these people could have been somehow gotten it wrong. That they were just mistaken, right? That isn't possible. If you look at the quote where Steve Neveling, the author of the piece, who knows better than anyone what was and wasn't said, if you look at the date, he posted, TLAIB did not say Nessel charged pro-Palestinian protesters because she's Jewish. So he posted that in response to Tapper. Dateline on that, September 23rd at 1:55 p.m. 1:55 p.m. So when does Dana Bash post her little piece? She posted after. She posts it. 3.3 million views. An hour later, she can't acknowledge that they got it wrong. Instead, she doubles down. Be very, very, when you hear on media, this is such a perfect example of identity politics. We're looking at a group. Was there defamation of a group? Is this group, which is a wealthy group, whose members are disproportionately, not all of them, but Jews are disproportionately influential. Jewish people have more influence per capita than members of other groups. There's just no question about it. And I'm Jewish, and I have no influence, but I recognize this. For Dana Bash, who I think is Jewish, by the way, and Jake Tapper, who is Jewish, by the way, and they're both multimillionaires. And have they ever experienced anti-Semitism? To start complaining and whining about it is so incredibly upsetting when it's their co-religionists who are doing the killing, the massacring, the genocide. I better look up and make sure Dana Bash is Jewish before I go any further, but I'm pretty sure she is, but maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Kamala's not Jewish. She's all in for genocide. So Dana Bash, let me just show you, because, and it's almost funny. It's so awful, because I don't want my co-religionists to be bad people. I want them to care about everyone. Bash was born Dana Ruth Schwartz. There you go. An author and educator in Jewish studies, her mother, and her father's an ABC News producer. So, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, she's complaining about all the anti-Semitism. Look at how she parlays having a dad who was an ABC News producer into becoming a top CNN anchor, who again has tremendous influence and wealth. It's ridiculous. I hate to say it, you can understand anti-Semitism, but you kind of sort of can. Here's from CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. They call on CNN to retract, apologize for falsely claiming TLAIB said Attorney General's biased because she's Jewish. Yeah, well, they should apologize. They absolutely should. They're not going to, but they should. So it's just, all of this is just so incredibly upsetting. It really is. And why get so angry? And I take it out on people who don't deserve it, who shouldn't be. I just expect people to see things this way, and they don't. And I just expect people to condemn genocide, to just say this is wrong. What Israel's doing is just flat out wrong, and not to make excuse. Oh, well, you got to look at what Hamas is doing. I'll talk about Hamas all day long, but that's now irrelevant. Israel is just on a violent rampage that's only making itself less safe. I mean, what it's really doing is killing Gaza. I can't take the defenses of it. And here's finally from Tapper. He's all taking his victory lap after he smeared TLAIB. He posts on X, a statement by Governor Whitmer, who buys into this BS because she sees it's on USA Today that TLAIB made an anti-Semitic remark. She sees that, CNN is running with this. There's lots of other Mediaite, right? Mediaite. Whitmer refuses to condemn the anti-Semitism of RASHIDA TLAIB. So she's like, I got to say something, I guess. So she, and I had a lot of trouble. It took me a while to figure out exactly what was going on here. But Whitmer, the suggestion. So she's saying TLAIB's suggestion that Attorney General Nessel would make charging decisions based on her religion as opposed to the rule of law is anti-Semitic. Okay, she didn't make that suggestion. That suggestion wasn't made. It was never made. And yet now Governor Whitmer is buying, and that's the influence that CNN has. They've started this witch hunt against RASHIDA TLAIB. One of the only, and why? Because she's one of the only pro-peace, pro-Palestine voices out there. Sure as hell there ain't no pro-Palestine voice coming from AOC. So let's take down TLAIB. Let's attack TLAIB. Let's bring her down. So that suggestion was never made. TLAIB never said that Nessel made the charging decisions based on Nessel's religion. But you know what? Let's say she had said it. Would that be anti-Semitic? I don't think so. How is that anti-Semitic to say that? Is it really? I mean, we've heard over and over and over again how Jews have to support Israel. If you don't support Israel, I hear this all the time. You're betraying your religion. You're a traitor to your people. I hear this over and over and over again. You don't think Nessel's under a lot of pressure? She might well be. I don't know. She might well be under a lot of pressure to go after those Jew haters at University of Michigan, even though they're nothing of the start. All right, 240. So here's this comment. I want to 240-242-2546. Here's a comment which I'm curious about. I don't care if you start late. I do care if you don't post a show thumbnail that we can click on so that we can start listening to the show when it first begins without the need to keep checking if you have started. So, okay, if you're hearing me answer, did it work today? Because I assume it did. I started a little late, but the thumbnail should have still worked. So let me know. Did it work? If you hear me now, PT, did it work? I assume it worked. I hope it worked. All right, 240-242-5646. All right. So I've been going for 45 minutes. I want to talk about, and I've been wanting to talk about this, and I've been wanting to, and I haven't gotten around to it. So now I will. So this story, and there you go. See, that's I start rushing and I mess up. So let me get that slide up so you can read the whole thing. I raised millions for Democrats at the DNC. I realize that they're the party of the rich. So I really think this is an important piece. For those of you who feel that I'm unfair to the Democrats, I don't recognize just how awful the Republicans are, how the Democrats are clearly not the lesser of two evil, or clearly much less evil, that they're there for working people, whatever. Anytime I criticize the Democrats, I hear that. So I thought this was such a powerful piece she says a lot of what I say, but she's got a lot more authority, right? Because why? Because she worked there. She has the authority. I never worked for the Democrats. I work for progressive group, so-called, and I've criticized them. I guess I have some cred there. I wrote a piece about it. I don't think it's going to get published. I'm kind of disappointed. I hope it is. But here, Evan Barker, and what she has to she just knocks it out of the park. And she'll talk all about why, despite, she made it, right? She was at the convention. She's obviously a successful operator. She raised millions for the party. But they're not her. It's not for her. It's not for her people. It's not for her family. They're not on her side. That's what she finally recognized. And she, it took her a while, but she got there. It's really It's a sad story. And I get why people are so resistant, because they don't want to believe that no one's on their side. You know, there was a Palestinian representative in Georgia. Her name is Ruhr. And she was not allowed to speak at the Democratic convention. She's a Democratic representative. She's not a congresswoman. If I said Congress, I'm wrong. She's a Georgia state representative named Ruhr. And she was desperate to speak at the convention to present a Palestinian view and also to endorse Kamala. She was going to endorse Kamala. And she was part of Uncommitted. And they didn't let her speak. And she got a lot of pushback from other Palestinians who said, wait, why would you even endorse Kamala? Why are you defending AOC? Because she defended AOC at one point for criticizing Jill Stein. And Ruhr, made this argument about how Stein is hurting Kamala's chances. And the response from the Palestinian community is, so what? Well, we don't care if she hurts. Stein's not our ally. Stein's not our friend. In the end, Ruhr, by the way, has withheld her endorsement of Kamala, although she said you can't support Trump and we can't have Trump be president. She didn't say we can't have Harris be president, but she should have. But I get it. Even though, and Ruhr's a Democrat, so she's suspect, right? I mean, she's biased. She's a Democrat. She's going to be biased. You're part of an organization. You're always going to want to believe that organization is good. Even if you're just a voter, even if you're just a constituent, you want to believe, oh, they're on my side. Remember the Tsar in Russia? If only the Tsar knew how bad things were, he would do something for us, right? Tsar didn't give a fat rat's ass about the serfs, the peasants, whatever you want to call them. Well, they're serfs and they're peasants. Different people. Tsar didn't care. But there's this hope. Oh my gosh, please, I hope people are on my side. Are they on my side? They're on my people with power. If only they knew. So here's Evan Barker. Grew up a long ways from the glitz and glamour of ostentatious wealth. I'd become accustomed to seeing in and around Democratic politics. From the heartland near Kansas City, my family floated between poor and working class. So that's her background. It's not Dana Bash's background. Remember, her mom's a historian. Her dad's a producer, ABC News producer. By the way, they don't necessarily make that much money, but they got health care. It was apparently comfortable circumstances when I'm on the west side of Manhattan. It's not cheap. Very different from Evan Barker. And her condition, Evan Barker's, made it tough for her, right? So she had a lung condition, a genetic lung disease that made her chronically ill her whole life. Didn't have health care as a kid. Now she does, by the way. She did when she was working for as a Democratic staffer. Life was tough. Life is tough for tens of millions, maybe 100+ million Americans. Life is very, very challenging, maybe more than that. And neither party is on their side. They don't care. That's what she came to realize. So she says, my family background is messy, but we all grew up. We wanted to believe the Democrats were our party. And you know what? They were for a while, right? The party of FDR, the party of LBJ, the Great Society by LBJ, championing unions. It's true. That's not the party anymore. It's gone. This is why working people are moving towards Trump. Because they see nothing in the Democratic Party whatsoever. They're just hoping, well, at least Trump kind of talks our language a little bit. Fast forward to today. Many of those same family members are no longer Democrats. They feel the party has changed, left them behind. Every time the elites chanted, we're not going back, what I heard was, we're not going back to the party your union family members voted for. So she explains why she heard that, not just this is what I heard, but why. She talks about how in the party itself, what she had to do, her work was, or what she observed over and over was the candidates that she was working for, the electeds for whom she worked, all they were doing was dialing for dollars. And that meant reaching out to rich people. They only spoke to rich people for hours and hours at a time. And those people had their ear and wanted something in return for their money. And working people couldn't play that game. So the priorities of working people, healthcare, good jobs, secure, affordable housing, were completely off the table. It didn't matter. The system, she thought, well, it's broken. But it's not broken. It's designed to keep working class people from true representation. That's the point. A feature, not a bug. Now, a lot of you will say, and rightly so, I believe, that a big part of the problem is that we don't, the enormous amounts of money in the system. They've completely corrupted it. I agree. But we've had our opportunities. We had an opportunity in 2016 to elect somebody who really did get that. I'm not saying he was perfect, but he got it, Bernie. And he didn't step forward. He didn't fight for working people after he lost that primary. After he lost the primaries to Hillary. And so she talks about those donors who Evan, that is, who wrote this article, why she left the Democratic Party after the convention. So she says about the donors, what I was just saying, they have niche policy issues they care about that seldom reflect the needs of people back home. Dems love to decry money in politics when it comes to Koch brothers or Elon Musk, but the billionaires who support Democrats are given a total pass and have a huge influence over policy. This is coming from a Democratic Party staffer. She sees all of it. And what are some of those policies? Well, certainly unconditional, unwavering support for Israel. I don't think there's much, I don't see a lot of decency. I never have in Kamala Harris. I think she's pretty much just a political animal. But if there is a heart, if there is concern and compassion for the victims of the Israeli genocide, she can't really, she feels constrained to keep it under wraps because of those billionaire donors. Right? I mean, obviously that's the case. She's terrified of offending her billionaire donors. They're the ones who are making the decision. They have all the influence over policy. Remember Hillary, so much that Hillary did. And this is the Democratic Party never pushing back. The wars. Right now, we're going to talk about Hillary. Ukraine, this is what billionaires want. This is a war billionaires want. It's been sold to you, so many of you want it, but many of you don't. Most Americans really want peace. Now, you might say, well, we want peace, but we don't want to give in to Putin. But we could have had peace. We could be having peace right now. But the billionaire class doesn't want it, so we don't have it. We could have Medicare for all, but we don't have it because the billionaire class doesn't want it. It's tragic. So she recognizes, that the party is broken. It does what billionaires want. And she acknowledges that Republicans do the exact same thing, that they're beholden to the billionaire class just as much as the Democrats. And I think this is accurate. I think this is true. Democrats are bigger hypocrites. Democrats take the high road. I think if you talk to Republicans, they would say, yeah, big fish eat little fish. That's the way it is. That's the way life is. They don't pretend that. I don't think I don't think working class Republican voters really, I don't think they would argue that they have any real say in the Republican Party. What they would say is, well, Trump's policies are better for us. That's what they would say. You heard this over and over in 2016. Well, he's going to keep the immigrants out who are suppressing our wages. He's going to build that wall. That's going to be good for us. He's not going to engage in those free trade deals because he said he wasn't. And he didn't, actually. Got us out of war, too. So those are issues that really, really matter to working class voters. I don't think they fool themselves that Trump really cares about them. Maybe some do. But I think they're just like, hey, they're cynical. They realize that the government isn't on their side, period. But on some issues that are important to them, maybe Trump is better. That's all. And so she says her realization of how bad the party is and how, the leadership is beholden to the billionaire class pushed her to moderate Dems. Pushed her from moderate Dems, rather, to progressives who rejected corporate PAC money. By the way, there are plenty, Raskin rejects corporate PAC money, but he still does what the corporations want. Embrace a higher minimum wage, endorse universal health care, and criticize the party's corporate wing. But when you're working with progressives, you get a front row seat to how the establishment beats and batters candidates out of step with party lines. So that is true. And, this isn't necessarily to demonize these people. It's just to say we've got to move in a different direction. The Democratic Party is not redeemable. The Democratic Party is not reclaimable. We've got to go in a different direction. And she notes how awful it is that Democrats have established Bush-era foreign policy to become the party of war. Now, that's not so new because, remember, many Democrats, I don't know the majority, but many Democrats, and certainly the party leaders, Biden, Hillary, not sure about John Kerry, maybe not Kerry, voted for the Iraq War. Instead of rebuilding the working class communities that have been hit hardest by their neo-lib trade policies, he spent $175 billion funding the war in Ukraine. Just think about that. You start talking about how we have to stick it to Putin. Think about how that feels to communities that themselves feel like they're living in practically a war zone right now. Doesn't feel so good. Maybe we don't call them dumbasses or ignoramuses because they don't realize just how great the Democrats are for them. Then she goes on to say what I also pointed out. Cherry on the cake. Kamala proudly touting her endorsement of Cheney. This is not to say Republicans are better or less evil than Democrats. It's to say there are good and sufficient reasons, certainly for the people who vote for Republicans, who vote against the Democrats, to do so. And they're understandable. Not to say it's okay that, Republicans are sort of these better, or their policies are better. No, not at all. It's to say that both sides have betrayed poor, struggling, and working people. And the Democrats, as Evan points out, are worse in terms of their hypocrisy. They're worse. She puts it all together here. See if I can get the whole slide up for you. Sad truth. The Democratic Party has lost its way entirely. They mostly speak to the college educated. Now, I think she gets some of this wrong. So I want to point this out. I don't think she's completely right, but they mostly speak to the college educated, the urban and affluent in their language. Their tone is condescending and paternalistic. They peddle giveaways to the college educated like student loan forgiveness plans that disproportionately help the base, snubbing the majority of the country without a four-year degree, and then offer no tangible plans for true reform. Okay, I think student loan forgiveness is a really good policy. I think we need debt-free college education in this country. No one who goes to college should have to borrow money to go to college under any circumstance. You get accepted to a school, then you can pay them out of future earnings by a small percentage. That's the pay it backwards theory. It's not like you have to pay no matter what. It's not like you have to pay enormous amounts. There is an interest, maybe like 2-3%, some percentage of your income. If you can't afford college, some percentage of your income in the future will be used for a certain period of time, not for the rest of your life, for maybe 20 years. And if somebody becomes a billionaire, if somebody starts Google, and they have a $500 million payday, which is possible, well, then they pay 2%, and that $500 million is $10 million going right into the coffers of the state university. There's also, or the university, there's other ways of doing it too. Higher taxes, of course. But I disagree with her criticism of the student loan forgiveness plans. I think those are good plans, and I think they're very beneficial to working people. But they do disproportionately help the base. And they do leave high school educated people behind. So if you're going to support student loan forgiveness, and you should, you've got to be clear how you're going to help people who don't have a college degree. How you're going to help factory workers who didn't go to college, working class people. You say to the factory worker, hey, yeah, you didn't go to college, you're not getting the benefit of this, but your kids will if they go to college. And guess what? We're guaranteeing everyone health care. You don't have to look to your employer anymore. You don't have to worry about having your job offshored because it's cheaper to work in China, cheaper to manufacture in China. So yes, the Democrats need to talk to all working people. Well, I think she's wrong on this one. And you see over and over this focus on college-educated people and people with degrees. The folks, the Democratic memes are so tone deaf. I pointed this out before, but like as though we're all supposed to be glad because the S&P 500 and Dow Jones hit the highest level ever. Well, there are people who don't have 401ks and retirement accounts. They're not better off. And even if you have a 401k or a retirement account, if it's small, maybe it's up 10 or 15 or 20% in the past year. It's done really well. So you're gone from 10,000 to 12,000. You going to retire on that? I don't think so. Just a complete failure to understand what life is like for tens of millions of Americans. And I don't think we really should not discount the cultural issues either at play, because there is such condescension the elites have, and I know, because like, I don't want to call myself elite, but I did. I went to a expensive private college. I have a degree, advanced degree. And I see this over and over in my set. Look, I moved to San Francisco from Kansas City, and the attitude I've since encountered furthers beyond belief. I've literally people laugh in my face. They call my home state dumb-F-istan. That's true. That's how so many people look at those Americans from the heartland, working class people. They're deplorables. Well, you know what? That's not how you win elections. And it's also wrong for another reason, because they're the people in the heartland, so many of them, they're the ones who are doing so poorly. They're struggling. So this is why. And it completely bolsters my argument. We have to move away forcibly from the Democratic Party if we want to make things better. Now, we also have to move away from the Republicans. But the thing is, if the Democratic Party cannot count on poor, struggling, working class voters, period, if it loses them, it will lose elections. And if it loses elections, it will have to change. The Republican Party has changed in certain ways, but in bad ways, a lot of times. They've adopted some populist policies, but they're never going to be a party that champions social justice, for example, or even economic justice in any real way. The Democratic Party could be that party, but it never will be if you keep voting for it when they nominate Kamala Harris's, the Joe Bidens, and I voted for Biden, by the way. And I was persuaded in 2020 that he was lesser evil than Trump. If we keep voting for these people, we're going to keep getting exactly what we've gotten. Ecocide, genocide, ever greater wealth and income inequality, poverty, and an increasingly fraught existence. Folks, let's stop it. Let's just get off this treadmill.